Indian, the other classic American motorcycle company. Tied for the oldest motorcycle manufacturer in the world, not really, but it sounds good, and perhaps the only alternative to Harley-Davidson at this time. What is the history of this motorcycle brand, and does the current company have a real claim to the iconic name it carries? In this video, we'll take a look at these questions, as well as examine the Harley-Indian rivalry and the future of the Indian motorcycle manufacturing company. So stay tuned, and if you're enjoying this content, please consider helping out this small channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. (1897) was the year when George M. Handy founded the Handy Manufacturing Company and started producing bicycles in Springfield, Massachusetts. Probably didn't need to specify that. How many Springfields could there be in the United States? The first Indian bicycle was produced in 1898, and in 1900, Oscar Hedstrom, like Handy, a former bicycle racer, joined the company. Together, they produced their first motorcycle, which debuted in its first public demonstration on June 1, 1901, at noon. This bike had a beastly 1.75 horsepower single-cylinder engine, which must have impressed the onlookers because sales of the production units were brisk and the company grew quickly. In 1903, Oscar Hedstrom rode one of these to a world motorcycle speed record of 56 miles per hour. And a year later, the company introduced the deep red color, which has become synonymous with Indian motorcycles. In the next few years, Indian started winning races and producing V-twins. Eric Cannonball Baker set many long-distance records on Indians running the new Power Plus motor, a 1000cc side-valve V-twin which propelled him to a top speed of 60 miles per hour. Indian swept the podium at the 1911 Isle of Man TT, and star rider Jake DeRosier set several speed records and won an estimated 900 races on dirt and board tracks. During World War I, Indian sold most of its inventory to the US Army, which had the unintended consequences of turning off the dealers and driving them to competitors' motorcycles, which is one of the reasons why, in the 1920s, Indian lost its position as the #1 American motorcycle manufacturer, to Harley-Davidson. The first Indian Scout was introduced in 1920, and the Indian Chief came along in 1922 but did not receive its signature skirted fenders until 1940. These were to become Indian's most successful models, and both received many updates in the interwar era. In 1927, Indian bought out the Ace Motor Corporation and adopted the Ace, which evolved to become the 401, then the 402. This was a high-quality luxury motorcycle with a unique longitudinal inline-4 engine and was one of the best bikes of the time. However, it was expensive, and Indian discontinued it in 1942 after the United States entered the Second World War. During World War II, Scouts and Chiefs were little used by the United States Army, as it was the Harley-Davidson WLA that won those military contracts. However, they were widely adopted by the British and other Commonwealth nations under Land-Lease programs. At the same time, Indian also built the shaft-driven 841 specifically for desert duty. And despite the fact that this bike is inspired by the BMW R71, it should look pretty cool to most Gucci riders. After the war, Indian was bought by Ralph B. Rogers, who continued production of the Chief and imported small motorcycles and scooters to sell under the Indian name. The scooters were sold under the name Papoose. In 1949, more small displacement models were brought in, but were initially reported to have reliability issues. In the early 50s, the 500cc Warrior was introduced, but the company was on the decline and eventually closed its doors in 1953. And so ends the story of the original Indian Motorcycle Company, America's oldest major motorcycle manufacturer. Over the next decades, the Indian name was acquired by various entities and exploited for a quick buck. At one point, a bunch of British Royal Enfields were imported, rebadged with Indian branding and names like Chief Trailblazer and Apache, and sold stateside for a tidy profit. Indian further declined, with the name being used to sell 50cc mini bikes under various ownerships during the 60s and 70s. In the 90s, a serious attempt was made to produce a proper Indian Chief, and the new Indian Motorcycle Manufacturing Company designed 3 models and negotiated to build a factory on the tribal lands of a local band of American Indians. The deal fell through due to legal and funding issues, but an Indian revival was gaining traction. Even 4 decades after the demise of the original company, the brand still appealed to American entrepreneurs and consumers. In 1999, as the retro bike craze was ramping up, Kawasaki produced a couple of models of its Vulcan Drifter motorcycle, which was specifically designed to pay homage to the Indian chief, skirted fenders and all. They never sold many of these and discontinued them in 2005, but I specifically remember seeing them back then and being impressed by the design. These were cool bikes and would probably be sought after now. Also in 1999, Indian Motorcycle Company of America formed and started getting things done. As a stopgap measure, while they designed an original bike, they slapped some skirted fenders on Harley clones with S&S engines, called them Chiefs, and started selling them. By 2002 though, they had built an all-new 100 cubic inch Power Plus V-twin and actually produced a properly original motorcycle. And then went bankrupt in 2003. But were bought out by a London-based equity firm and started building the very expensive and exclusive Chiefs in 2006. Eventually, the engine grew to 105 cubic inches. Finally, Indian Motorcycles was acquired by Polaris Industries, a builder of ATVs and snowmobiles, and an enormous company which had ventured into the motorcycle space with its own brand, Victory Motorcycles, and which produced some of the coolest American cruisers on the market. Polaris had long had its eye on the Indian brand, but waited until legal issues were resolved before making a move to acquire the name and design of the new Indians. By 2013, the Powerstroke motor was powering traditionally styled Chief Classic and Chieftain models. Now, Polaris's other brand, Victory, was never afraid to utilize modern tech, and even though the Indian Powerstroke motor was a traditional pushrod air-cooled V-twin, when Indian brought back the Scout, they didn't hesitate to use liquid cooling and didn't bother with pretend cooling fins. Everyone who rode the new Scout found it superior to the competing Evo-powered Harley Sportsters, and those bikes have sold well in their many trim levels. Unfortunately, Polaris discontinued the Victory brand in 2017, as the Indian brand was the better seller. Check out my video on the rise and fall of Victory in the top right corner. But, like Victory, the new Indians were definitely performance-based motorcycles. The flat tracker styled FTR 1200 is still, in my opinion, the best handling American motorcycle you can buy. And the new Challenger was so much better than the Harley-Davidson baggers at the time of its introduction that it caused a major reaction from Harley and set off an arms race for the best equipped and performing baggers. This is great to see, as it's the customer who wins whenever the competition heats up. Most recently, Indian added the Chief line to compete with the Harley Softails, and these bikes are another reason why Harley has upped their game lately. I often joke on my channel that if not for Indian, Harley would still be selling the twin cam engine. Indian has benefited from the technological innovations made by Victory, and hopefully Victory's excellent reliability ratings as well. And it has forced Harley-Davidson to take their customers and their technological development more seriously. Interestingly, where Indians used to be slightly more expensive than Harleys, in MSRP anyways, good luck finding a Harley for MSRP, lately Harley's insistence on becoming a premium brand and its quest to purge all the more affordable models from its lineup has turned that around and made Indian the less expensive option. Both are still pricey, but that's what assembling bikes in the States costs. And by all accounts, as Harley sales are falling every year, with the company recording about 162,000 units sold in 2023, Indian sales are still growing. Although Indian has not yet released its sales numbers for 2023, by all accounts, they've sold about a quarter of Harley's numbers. Given the current trend of Indian consistently growing and Harley consistently shrinking, it is entirely possible that within a decade they might be on par. And who would have thought that possible just a few years ago? 4 years back, people in my comments section used to scoff at the idea that Indian could ever become competitive with Harley, but nobody's scoffing now. It's a bad idea to underestimate a huge company like Polaris. Speaking of which, Harley riders used to deride Indians by referring to them as Polaris is. Probably spurred on by Harley-Davidson themselves when they released this snarky ad. Honestly now, did you spend your youth dreaming of someday owning a Polaris? Actually, plenty do. They make nice stuff. So is the Polaris-owned Indian Motorcycle Company the same as the original? No. Does it matter? Well, if you like American bikes, these are American. Are they nice? Yes. Does the company employ American labor? Yup. I don't see any reason to deride the brand just because they're not the same lineal company that started in 1901. Doesn't make any sense. So, Indian is now a well-established motorcycle company which isn't far behind the Triumphs and Ducatis of the world in units sold and profits. They make beautiful, stylish American cruisers in an American factory which employs American workers. They offer a wide range of products, and while their bikes may be expensive, they are well-designed and technologically advanced. And damn it, I like them, especially the Chiefs with that gorgeous frame and attractive air-cooled Thunderstroke engine. In the future, I'd love to see an adventure bike with a motor from the FTR 1200, as well as a smaller FTR 750 on offer for younger riders. If Indian made it look like the original concept bike, that would be awesome. And Indian still needs to bolster its dealership network a bit. Although, they may be working on that. Because if you're from the Toronto area like I am, well, I got good news for you, because I just found out that GP Bikes, Toronto's biggest motorcycle store, now carries Indian motorcycles and BMW. Good for them. But what do you think of the current Indian motorcycle company? Are you glad to see it finally revived for good? Would you consider one of these bikes, or are you Harley or die? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Ride safe, and may the spokes be with you.